Hey everybody, what's good? What's going on? JB here, back with another CyberInsight live stream. Today we're going to be talking a little bit about some Cisco versus Juniper action. Been seeing a lot of folks are starting to go after this 30-day challenge that Juniper is putting on. And, I love me some Juniper. If you've been following the channel the past few years, you know that I think it was a year or two ago, I threw out my own challenge to see if I could do all six, or at the time, all five of the Juniper Associate certs. And we ended up doing that. And then they threw on the Mist AI Wi-Fi cert. We did that too. So whenever anybody's really interested in getting into Juniper, you know that I just love that stuff. And so today I wanted to put together a little live stream where we talk about the pros and cons, although we're not really going to focus too much on cons, just the pros of the CCNA versus the JNCI-Junos cert. So if you have any questions as we're going through this, go ahead, throw those in the chat. We'll hit those up. And yeah, make sure you smash the like button, subscribe to the channel, all that other good stuff. You know what to do. Well, we're going to jump right into this. I'm going to move over to this other screen here. And I put together kind of, at least from my perspective, what I think is a high-level breakdown between these two different certs. We're going to go a bit more in depth into the data behind this after we hit these up, but I think just off the top, it's good to jump into it. So the CCNA really is the standard when it comes to, I wouldn't say entry-level networking certs, because neither of these are entry-level certs. When I think entry-level, I think of like the Network Plus or something like that. But I would say junior-level networking certs for someone who's along the path to become a network admin or a network engineer. These would be definitely, major certs that you would go after. For the CCNA, they really start from scratch, and it's a combination of networking fundamentals and really getting involved into the Cisco side of things, the configurations, and understanding different aspects of how to configure routing and switch networks with Cisco. And they've also kind of added a few things over the years. I mean, when I took my CCNA, it was back in 2006. And there was, the difference between that now is quite a bit. Back then, there was a lot of stuff dealing with PPP, HDLC. There was no mention of security, no IPv6. I mean, we were still doing like RIP and stuff like that back then, which was pretty wild. And the exam back then actually had 3 labs that you had to go through. So it was no joke back in the day. Now they've kind of taken it and morphed it into, I would say, probably a little bit more of an all-encompassing network certification, because of the fact that they are talking about wireless, they're talking about programmability and automation, and a few other things. But like I said, they do definitely also cover the networking fundamentals, and that's kind of a big difference between it and the JNCI-Junos. Is the JNCI-Junos exam really expects you to already know about subnetting. It expects you to already know about kind of layer 2 versus layer 3, understanding switching versus routing. They do cover it very, very briefly in their course, but I feel like the CCNA, you could go in and take your time with the CCNA and build up, where the JNCI-Junos, having a background of like a Network Plus, definitely would help you out quite a bit. Also, a lot of people normally will go for the CCNA first, just because it's much more widely known and accepted. So if you've done that, then going into the JNCI-Junos, really your learning curve is just getting familiar with how Juniper handles things. And so it actually is a great segue into getting into other networking providers. So when we're looking at the specifics of the exam itself, the CCNA is a little bit bigger. It's you get 120 minutes. The amount of questions is 100 plus. They don't have it actually tied down to a specific number. I think it varies a bit. As I mentioned, they don't have sims in the exam anymore. The scoring used to be, it was up to 1,000. I think on both of these, it's like 1,000 points. But you needed to get like an 850 or 849 to pass. They don't even tell you what the score is anymore. So I guess it's kind of hard to aim for that. I think it's a little bit of a variable scoring at this point, but I would say, you want to aim for 80 to 85% when you're trying to study for an exam like that. It is valid for 3 years, and then the price, it's a little bit more than the Juniper exam. It's $300. On the Juniper side of things, it's 90 minutes, 65 questions, no sims with that either, and you need about a 70 to pass. Again, they don't tie it back to a specific scoring value, but just based off of my own experience and then other people the past couple of years, you're looking for trying to get above a 70 to pass on that. This is valid for 3 years as well, and it's a little bit cheaper. It's $200, and we're going to talk about some ways that Juniper actually makes this even an easier cert for you to go after. I'm going to grab some water here for a second. Excuse me. So something else that's kind of interesting with both of these is how you go about your recertification for these exams. You can either go and take the same test again. You can go and pass a higher level exam. So like if you were to go, for instance, and take one of the special exams for Juniper, or you were to go and take one of the professional exams for Cisco, that would re-up all the certs underneath that. They also both allow you to recertify via taking classes. With Juniper, they have different classes that if your company goes and pays for that, then that will count towards recertifying. With Cisco, I think you could either take classes through them. They also have some type of like continuing education units. I'm not sure if that's directly tied back to having to take their specific classes or if there's other ways that you can kind of get those educational credits, kind of similar to like the CISP or something like that. So it really depends which way you want to go. I always say go for some more certs and then just get everything done. Rolls back up underneath that. Let's see. I see a few comments coming in. I'm going to hit those up once we get through this first page here before we jump into the rest of the stuff. As far as areas that we hit on in these, the Cisco is a little bit more all-encompassing. So we're talking network fundamentals, wired and wireless networks, LANs, WANs, routing, IP services, which is more stuff related to NTP, DNS, TACACS, Radius, things like that. A little bit of security, that's both from the perspective of encryption, VPNs, and like access control lists. And then one thing that they've hit on the past few years quite a bit is starting to get you at least familiar with DevOps principles. So talk about automation and programmability. That is something that they're definitely hitting quite a bit. And they actually have their own other associate exam, the DevNet, which totally dives into that. Same thing with Juniper, though. Juniper actually has a DevOps associate exam, which I've done, which is very good. That actually was kind of like my first taste of getting into network DevOps stuff. From the JNCI-Junos side, again, like I mentioned, it is just heavily focused on Juniper route and switch concepts. They do a brief bit of overview on networking fundamentals, and then you are getting into how to view things within Juniper devices, how to configure things, how to monitor things. And we're going to go into the specifics of what those particular components are here in a minute. But that's kind of the main thing. It's very, very Juniper specific. And so if you already have kind of the foundational network knowledge or baseline of knowledge behind that, then it's not too much of a heavy lift to kind of just learn how to look at things through a Juniper lens. Let's see. So differences as far as associate level exams. Cisco has 3, the CCNA, the CyberOps, and the DevNet. You can kind of figure out what those are. CCNA is route switch. CyberOps is kind of their more defensive security type of stuff. And DevNet is going to be their DevOps type of things, where the JNCIA on the Junos, or on the Juniper side of things, they have 7 associate exams. I have 6 of these, so I've done the Junos, the SEC, which is dealing kind of more with their different security tools and firewalls, DevOps, which is kind of similar to the DevNet exam, their JNCIA, which is their architecture associate exam, which actually out of all of the associate Juniper certifications is by far my favorite. If I could have all folks who want to go down like the network path take any exam, I thought that the architecture exam for this just covers a lot of interesting information from a network architecture and project perspective that you normally don't end up seeing in other exams. For the most part, it's vendor agnostic. So while they do sprinkle in a little bit of Juniper stuff, it's just a really, really solid exam to go after. The Mist AI is their wireless cert. They have a cloud cert as well. And then one that they just added this year that I haven't done yet, but maybe would like to knock out sometime this year, is their data center cert. And that's dealing mostly with, VXLAN and data fabrics and stuff like that. So two more things, but they're two very, very important things, is we're talking about accessibility of getting the training and cost for these different exams. So from the Cisco side, there's no free Cisco CCNA training. There's no vouchers, discount vouchers, things like that. There are a few things that you can do to help alleviate that pain, though. You can use the DevNet Labs for free. David Bombal has some great videos on how you can access that. So that's like the cloud version of Viral, which I think is now called CML, Cisco Modeling Labs. There's a DevNet version of that. You can go configure anything you want. All you have to do is sign up for time in that. It's actually very similar to the Juniper vLabs, so it's a great option. You also can always use Packet Tracer. If you've watched any of my CCNA labs and Network Plus labs that I've done here on the channel, you know that I'm a big fan of Packet Tracer for being free. You can run it on your laptop. It's just a really, really great environment, and pretty much will get you everything you need for doing kind of like the fundamental Cisco route switch type of configurations. As far as courses go, they do have a free networking fundamentals course. I think that has a lot of overlap with what you would be covering in the CCNA. So while it's not a CCNA specific course, that is there through their Network Academy. You can go and you can take that for free. The nice thing with the Cisco is because it's so widely accepted and used, and it's been a standard in the industry for so long, you don't necessarily really need to worry about going and getting training specifically from Cisco for it. So there's so many different classes out there. There's free classes on YouTube. You could go to Udemy. There's tons of places where you can go and get stuff that's either going to be free or at a very low cost. So the barrier to entry from a training perspective compared to what it was 20 years ago, where there was like 2 books at Borders that you had to go get. And that was it. And one of the options was Cisco Press, and it was super dry. And you were like, man, there's got to be a better way. Thankfully, nowadays there is a better way. So you can definitely go and do that. The flip side of that, from the Juniper perspective, is that they have a free training course. And this actually is kind of somewhat necessary because there's not that many free or openly available Juniper training options out there. I want to say that there's a few online training providers, I guess we would call them, that do have courses for this. Whether or not it's completely up to date compared to what Juniper actually puts out, I don't know. Probably not, and probably maybe not worth the money. The Juniper free class is pretty much all you need. They do a great job. You get a practice test with that, or multiple practice tests depending upon the exam. And then the awesome thing with that, and something that I'm always talking about, which I think makes Juniper, really lowers the barrier of entry here for folks, is the fact that they have a voucher exam that you can take. And if you do a good enough job on that, then you get a 75% off exam voucher. So instead of paying $200, you pay $50. You can't beat that. It's awesome. So definitely something that I push folks towards if they're interested in going down this route. One last point. Kind of surprised to see this, or at least I wasn't, but I know other folks were. The average salary between jobs when looking at jobs that require the CCNA versus the JNCIA-Junos, we're talking almost a $10K difference in the average salary, $82,000 to $90,000. Now, there's a lot of things that go into that. In some cases, perhaps those ones that are requiring the JNCIA-Junos might also be requiring the CCNA. But I think it also lends to the fact that people that normally go and get the JNCIA-Junos might have a little bit more experience, and also it's a little bit more of a niche skill, right? So if an environment is actually using Juniper, they might have to be paying a little bit more of a premium to get people in there that know Juniper, since Cisco has such a saturated market share. You know, they got to cough up a little bit more money to get folks in there into those positions. So that might be a little bit of a nugget, maybe something that might make you want to go and take a look at going after some Juniper certs, if that's going to help you in a salary negotiation. It's always better to have multiple skills than one skill set. And as a engineer or architect, if you can explain to your boss, your client, why, hey, we love Cisco. Cisco is great, but sometimes it's good to look and see what the other players in the field have out there. You're only doing due diligence, and that's always a skill that is highly appreciated in different environments. So, all right, I'm going to throw some comments up here real quick, and then we're going to dig a little bit deeper into the stuff behind this. So, hey everyone. Hey, appreciate you dropping in. Good vibes, always good vibes. Hey, John. Hey, appreciate you dropping in. Things are going good. Things are going good. Happy Wednesday to everybody. Appreciate you dropping in as well. If you got any questions as we move through this, go ahead, throw those in there. We'll hit those up. So we can kind of just start moving into a little bit more in depth behind some of these and talk about some of these free resources. I put links in the video description for all of the free Juniper training and stuff like that, but we're going to go a little bit more in depth into what each of these exams cover and some of the resources that are available for them. So real quick, I just wanted to throw this up just so you know I wasn't just making numbers up, just wasn't pulling them out of my ass. Actually got these off of payscale.com, looking at different certifications. And you can see the base salary for stuff requiring the JNCIA-Junos. And you see there's a whole bunch of titles that kind of like, feed up into how they come up with these numbers. These aren't the be all end all of that type of stuff, but it is just kind of interesting to take a look at this. And I definitely think the fact that there's so many CCNAs out there, it just means that employers maybe aren't having to fight for that. But we shouldn't be taking away the fact that the CCNA is arguably the most lucrative networking certification that somebody could get early on in their career. If you get the CCNA, you will not have a problem having people reaching out to you about bringing you in for interviews. Now, hopefully you got the skills to back it up because if you get into an interview and they put some lab equipment in front of you and you don't know what you're doing, then I've seen that blow up pretty badly before. But if you put in the work and you know what you're doing and you got your CCNA, you are definitely on the right path to having a very long and successful career in IT. Let's see. So we're going to hit up just a little bit more in depth over what the CCNA exam covers. So I was kind of talking about how it really hits the networking fundamentals hard off the bat. Back in the day, the CCNA actually used to consist of 2 tests. You could either take one combined test where they had a networking intro exam, and then they had a IC&D exam, which was interconnecting Cisco network devices. And a lot of people actually would break that up because that intro exam pretty much was like taking your Network Plus. They would do that and then go and study the IC&D and then go and take that. Nowadays, I think it's just one exam. So you definitely want to give yourself some time. If you haven't done the Network Plus and you aren't familiar with that, really the networking fundamentals here is what everything else is going to be based on. And so if you try to rush through that and jump into the other things, you're doing yourself a disservice. You're gonna F yourself up because you really got to understand all this stuff before moving on to how you go about configuring these things. So yeah, network component fundamentals, all the stuff you would expect to see: routers, switches, firewalls, wireless access points, controllers, endpoints. So that would be like phones, PCs, servers, stuff like that. Different types of network topology architectures. Again, this might look somewhat familiar to you if you are familiar with the Network Plus. They do go into some stuff that starts to be a little bit more advanced networking stuff. So you're talking your 2-tier versus your 3-tier. You might be familiar with access distribution and core type of architecture. Spine and leaf, which is a newer architecture that we've been seeing in data centers the past 10 plus years or so. That's when you're dealing with data fabrics and VXLAN, things like that. Wide area networks, kind of your flatter SOHO type of environments. And then talking about the differences between on-prem and cloud environments or hybrid environments and how you bring those together. Some stuff that you will not see on the Juniper exam is dealing with physical interfaces and cabling types. Again, totally going back into the Network Plus type of stuff where you would have hit that up hard. Troubleshooting issues with those, definitely. And then understanding TCP, UDP, IPv4 and subnetting, private IP addressing, stuff like that. A little bit of an intro to IPv6, the different types of IPv6 addresses, other ways that we're looking at IP information for different types of devices. This is definitely newer, from when I took it, getting into the wireless principles and things like that. Again, that's not on the Juniper JNCIA-Junos. Virtualization and switching concepts. So dealing with, MAC address tables, how you go about doing ARPs, frame switching, frame flooding, all that type of good stuff, which eventually leads into spanning tree and trying to protect against loops in your environment. Then we start getting into like the actual specific Cisco configurations. So you're dealing with how to set up different types of switch configurations at a layer 2 perspective. So dealing with access ports, trunk ports, 802.1q, native VLANs, all that good stuff. How to bond different types of physical interfaces together using LACP. Talked about avoiding different types of layer 2 loops and environments. So talking about spanning tree, rapid per VLAN spanning tree. How that all works, how to calculate that, different types of actual access port configurations that you would end up putting on to help speed up the learning process for spanning tree. Let's see, a little bit of the wireless stuff, a little bit more wireless stuff there for sure. Then IP connectivity, so kind of how we were talking about the layer 2 stuff, this is just dealing with the layer 3 stuff. So understanding about routing, static routing, default routing, dynamic routing. Back in the day, this was, they hit so much stuff in the CCNA. It was RIP version 1, RIP version 2, IGRP, EIGRP, OSPF. Trying to think if there was anything else that they hit up there. Not so much. Now, they're just like, hey, all you need to know is OSPF. Like, awesome. Don't need to waste your time with all those other things. Because OSPF is really, from a LAN perspective, what you're going to end up seeing the most. And then as you progress a little bit further down your networking path, then you're going to be getting into BGP and things like that. IP services, I mentioned before, these are kind of like using different things within the environment. So your NTP for timing, DNS, DHCP, SNMP for monitoring, syslog, how to access devices securely, so using SSH instead of Telnet, things like that, which mentioning SSH leads nicely into security fundamentals. So dealing with kind of just security concepts in general, and then device security, so access control, passwords, encryption, VPNs, site-to-site VPNs. Let's see, anything else that kind of sticks out there. Encryption for Wi-Fi, definitely hit those types of things up. And then the last part, what I mentioned is kind of newer. They start to scratch the surface a little bit on automation and programmability. So how you can automate different network changes in your environment. If you're kind of interested in starting to scratch the surface on this, Nick Russo has a lot of great stuff from the DevNet exam perspective. He has a great study plan. But an even easier way to do that, if you haven't done any type of like Python programming with networking devices, David Bombal has a great, network. I'm trying to remember the specific term. It's pretty much like Python for network engineers. And it's a great course. I think you probably can go pick it up for like $20. He gives you all of the configurations that you need, helps you walk through setting everything up. It's a lot of fun. So definitely if you want to start going down that road as far as understanding how to automate network changes, that's a pretty good place to start. So they go a little bit into traditional networks with controller-based networking, software-defined architectures, so overlays, underlays, data fabric. Again, as you kind of start to get a little bit more advanced with that, then you start talking about things like VXLAN and things like that. Different things that Cisco has to enable this type of management in a data center, different ways that you're able to actually connect to the devices to be able to push out configurations and pull them back via APIs. And then different types of configuration management tool sets, so Puppet, Chef, and Ansible. All very, very, very good stuff, useful stuff. So that's kind of the CCNA learning objectives, at a high level. Let me take a few questions here, and then we'll hop over and look at the same thing from a Juniper perspective. Instead of a CCNA cert, would Network Plus help with Juniper? Yes, you're definitely going to need some type of networking fundamentals knowledge to go and take the JNCI-Junos. I think Juniper actually has some networking fundamentals courses that you could take that are free. But the question is, do you want to just be taking courses, or do you want to be studying something and getting an exam or getting a certification along with that? So if you kind of want to go that route, then doing the Network Plus first would be, pretty reasonable because you'd end up getting a cert out of it versus if you do some of the free networking fundamentals courses, which, like I said, you could use a Juniper one. I also mentioned one that Cisco has. They have a networking fundamentals course that's free as well. You wouldn't necessarily be getting any type of cert out of that. Again, getting a cert isn't the real reason to do that. The real reason is getting the knowledge and understanding so you can go after some more advanced stuff. But it also doesn't hurt. So just something to consider when weighing those options. Oh, hey. So you're using my Network Plus study guidebook. That's awesome. I have a link for that in the video description. You can get it off of Amazon. A lot of people find it to be pretty helpful, so that's cool. I'm glad you're liking it. What are my thoughts on cloud networking certs? Well, I'm not really aware of too many cloud networking certs. So you have like the Juniper Cloud cert, which is good, but it's really the first half of that is focusing on like cloud fundamentals, so the same type of stuff that you'd hit up if you were doing like the AWS CCP or the Azure's fundamental cert. And then the rest of it, the second half of it, is strictly Juniper specific cloud technology. So not really overly useful unless you're actually planning on using those Juniper tools. You have the AWS certs. They go over, their networking stuff somewhat. So like the SAA or the SOA, both of those associate certs. I don't know. I'm personally at the moment working on the AWS Advanced Networking Specialty. But I don't know. I wouldn't point someone towards doing any of that before they actually learn networking in general. I think learning networking in the cloud or trying to learn networking in the cloud is going to be pretty frustrating if you don't have the fundamentals kind of already locked in. So I wouldn't push anybody towards that unless there was a specific reason for them to do it. Okay, let's take a look at the same thing, but from the Juniper side of things. I'm going to take a quick drink of water too. So looking at the exam objectives, and I think I put links for both what we were just talking about, the Cisco one and the Juniper one here. So they have a networking fundamentals section as well. So dealing with layer 2 stuff, collision domains, broadcast domains, differences between router switches, Ethernet, MAC addresses, layer 3 IP addresses and subnets, IPv6 versus v4, subnetting, supernetting, a little bit of decimal to binary conversion, longest match, a little bit of quality of service stuff, and TCP versus UDP. Again, they hit this stuff pretty quick. It's not, this is more of like a refresher, honestly, than if I was pointing somebody towards just learning this stuff off the bat. Again, use some other networking fundamentals course, use a Network Plus to get spun up and really feel comfortable with these things. And then once you do that, then the rest of this kind of just falls into place and it's not so bad. So then they talk about Junos OS fundamentals. So the main thing here that they really hit up is the differences between their control plane and their forwarding planes. So control plane you can think of kind of as like the brain, and the forwarding plane is actually what's sending the traffic out to source and destinations. Routing engine and packet forwarding engine. Again here, like they have like a routing table which has like all of the routes, and then the forwarding table has the specific routes that they're implementing that will actually be used to send traffic where it needs to go. Other things, kind of just getting familiarity with the user interface. So CLI, the edit mode, the show commands. One thing that they do very, very good, especially compared to the regular like Cisco iOS, is being able to tailor commands into different types of outputs and also pipe in other types of commands. So if you're familiar with using Linux, then you be familiar with how you pipe to other commands, and you're able to, search for something and then grep for another command, and then you can pipe that to something else where you can export it into a certain type of format. Junos is awesome for that. And the cool thing with Junos, and this is actually like a really great thing compared to Cisco, is it's the same operating system across all of their platforms. So router, switch, firewall, it's all running Junos. So if you learn it on one, then you're going to be able to use it on the other. Now, obviously, there's differences in the functionality of the device, and there's also different types of things that you get licenses for. But the basics of moving through the CLI and understanding what you can do and where files are stored and stuff like that is really, really nice and scales very well. Where with Cisco, depending on what you have, an iOS switch, you have something running NXOS, you have an ASA, you have these different things. There's a little bit of a learning curve sometimes. I mean, like, for the most part, it's probably like 75 to 85% the same, but there's always that 15% that can, throw you off a little bit. So I don't know. To me, that's one of the things that I really love about Juniper. I think they do a really good job with that. So yeah, moving around the CLI, filtering output. So like I was mentioning, how you can pipe stuff. The active versus candidate configuration. So another nice thing with Juniper, when you make a configuration change, it doesn't automatically become active until you actually commit it. So unlike Cisco, where you could type something in, you jack it up, next thing you know, you're shit out of luck because you just lost connectivity to the device. Juniper allows you to type stuff in and then do a commit configuration. Also allows you to do a rollback. So you could commit something, and if you don't end up validating it within a certain period of time, it will roll back to the previous configuration. Yes, there are ways to do that with Cisco as well. Again, depends on the particular type of Cisco device and other types of configurations that you have in place on those devices. With Juniper, it just kind of comes that way out of the box. It's pretty nice. So looking at configuration files, saving, loading them, JWeb. So that's like their GUI. I honestly don't use that, but they want you to know that it's there and you can use it. Then you get into configuration basics. So initial configuration, setting up user accounts, different types of login classes. So you can think of that as like privilege levels, right? User authentication methods. So are you going to be using local passwords? Are you using TACACS? Are you going to be using Radius? Things like that. How to configure interfaces, different types of interfaces. Configuration groups, if you have shared configurations, be pushed across different things. Additional configuration elements, these are kind of like the IP services that we were looking at from the CCNA perspective. Configuration archival, logging and tracing. You always want to be sending logs off box to a syslog server. Rescue configuration, having that there and being able to resort back to something that you know that works. And then just a few other groups here. So operational monitoring and maintenance. Again, kind of building a little bit more on getting familiar with the CLI, doing show commands. So that's going to be looking at configurations of things. Monitoring commands is looking at things more interactively as they're happening. Interface statistics, networking tools. So how to ping things, how to SSH from the device, trace route, things like that. How to install the OS, upgrade the OS, turn the device off, get to the root password recovery in case you actually need to reset the device altogether. Very, very useful things. As I mentioned, a lot of this is very, very specific to Juniper compared to the CCNA, which is specific to Cisco, but then also kind of covering stuff a little bit more from a general perspective. Let's see, routing fundamentals. So traffic forwarding concept. So we were talking about the routing table versus the forwarding table, where the routing table shows all the routes, the forwarding table shows what's actually applied and what the traffic will actually be using to get to different destinations. Route preferences, administrative distance, things like that. Routing instances, pretty much it's like a VRF. It's like creating multiple virtual routers on the device. How to do static routing. Differences between static routing and dynamic routing. They don't really get into any deep configuration specifics for different routing protocols on here. So that's not necessarily as crazy in depth as a CCNA would get with like needing you to understand everything about OSPF. They're kind of, from this perspective, believing that you are aware of OSPF, you kind of know what you're doing with OSPF. They're just going to show you, how you go about actually configuring something on the device from a routing perspective. And the last thing is dealing with routing policies and firewall filters. So this is how to configure and monitor these once you put those on the device. Routing policies is kind of like, if I want traffic to come from this source and go to this source, but I don't want the same rule to be applied to something else, you can set up different policies to do that. You set up routing policies on how you're going to be receiving and injecting traffic from different routing protocols into the routing table and the forwarding table. Let's see. And then firewall filters is just pretty much ACLs, right? So how you go about setting up an ACL. In this case, these firewall filters are not stateful. So it's not like using the SRX firewall. These are like using ACLs on a Cisco device. So traffic coming in one way, you're going to need to set, a rule to either allow the traffic to come back through or use TCP established or something like that. So yeah, I think that pretty much covers all of the exam objectives for the JNCI-Junos. Got some more questions coming in. I'll hit those, and then we're going to talk about free training resources. So do I think that a lot of people are pushing for the JNCIA now with a 30-day challenge? Yeah, I mean, I think so. I'm glad to see Juniper get some traction with that. They also were getting traction probably back when COVID hit, because for a while there, they actually were doing, the exams were free. And there was a few different cert vendors that were kind of doing that too. And I mean, I'm trying to think, for all of my Juniper certs, I think I was able to do 4 of them while they were free, and then they switched it over to the 75% off thing. And I think the issue there was they just were having people take advantage of the voucher system, and there was some shenanigans going on. So they had to do something to make people put a little bit of skin into the game for it, but I think it works out. Let's see. Also, just to mention for those watching, myself and Juniper are working together to give away 5 free exam vouchers to people. Hey, there you go. That's awesome. Drop your contact info there as far as what you're doing that. So whether you're doing that on LinkedIn or you're doing that on Twitter or someplace else, throw that down there so that people can go and find you so that they know how to get those vouchers. Juniper's awesome like that. I mean, I love the folks over there in their training organization. They're always, trying to help people get a taste of Juniper, because normally when people do, they end up loving it. So it's a win-win for everybody. Let's see. So as far as the different training options that we have here. So if you log into the learning portal, that is where all of their stuff is now. It used to be, what was it? JNCIA-Junos, or Junos Genius, I think. Yeah, that's what the name was. Junos Genius had all the stuff. Then they moved it over to this learning portal. So if you were familiar with the Genius website before and this throws you off a little bit, just take a little time to get comfortable with finding where stuff is. So let's see. If we go, I want that 30-day. So we're going to just go click on Get Started. And here they kind of give you a breakdown of all these different exams you can do. If you're coming from a Cisco background, the CCNA-Junos course that they have is awesome. It will really, really simplify kind of like, hey, I know how to do this. What's the equivalent from a Juniper perspective? So really worth doing that. You can see all the other associate ones that they have there. I don't think the DC one is there, but the other 6 are there. You could go in, sign up for the class that they have, click on any of those. It will take you to a place where you can sign up for the course for free. And this is what it ends up looking like. You have all these different modules that you go through, and then there is a voucher assessment test at the end. Worth pointing out that they do have other practice tests, but you don't actually see those underneath this particular course. What you have to do is, if you were back on this main page, you go to Certification Resources. And from in here, I believe we would go down to, let's say, enterprise routing and switching. And they have all their exams that fall kind of underneath that learning path. You can see that you have the JNCIA-Junos, and you'll see that there's a practice test right there. So you have the ability to go in there. See if I have that popped up here. Yeah, practice exam here. Now, something cool that can help you out with this as well is I've done videos on multiple practice tests that they've had, and I've done review videos on all of the Juniper certs that I've taken. So if you go and you take a look at my playlist for Juniper stuff, I got at least one practice test and one review video for 6 of the associate exams. Some of these actually have multiple practice tests. So like for Junos, see that I have 2 practice exams there. The JNCIA had 2 practice exams. I think the rest of them all had 1. But yeah, so definitely you can go check that out. That will help you out quite a bit if you kind of want a little bit of a study buddy while you're learning your Juniper stuff. Then that's totally what those are there for. And if you have any questions, you're going through that, I normally respond back to comments people leave still on those videos to this day. So definitely happy to help out that way. So talked about the course. Let's see, where was I? Yeah, talked about the course, talked about the exam voucher and the practice test, talked about the other practice test. One other thing that you'll want to do for sure is VLabs. So this is kind of like the DevNet CML thing that Cisco has. You can sign up for VLabs. You just register for time in there to be able to get virtual instances of all of their different types of devices. It's pretty good. I've done some stuff with that. I also have like some Juniper equipment here just in my own home lab that I do that as well. And then at work, I've had lots of experience using kind of carrier grade Juniper equipment. So best place to learn is at work if you could do that. So let's see, anything else I want to hit up here? Here's kind of my exam history since 2020 for taking all these different Juniper exams. The last one I did was a MIST AI back beginning of 2021. I'd like to take the Juniper, the JNCIA-DC, their data center one that just came out a few months ago. Kind of trying to figure out whether or not I want to just take the practice test for it and then go take the exam. I don't think they have an open learning course for it yet. But as soon as they have the open learning course, I definitely will go and do that as well. Let's see if there's anything else. I think that was pretty much everything I wanted to hit today. Does anybody have any questions before we wrap it up? I'm going to make sure that I put all the links for everything in the video description, so that should help folks out. Like I said, I got all those practice exam walkthroughs, so definitely take advantage of that. That will help you out quite a bit. Those tests are very similar to what you will end up seeing on the actual exam. It's not word for word the same, but if you do good on those practice tests, you should pass the exam. So very cool. Appreciate everybody dropping in. We'll just go ahead, wrap this up, I guess. I think next week I might do a CCNA video. I had a bunch of people asking about different resources for doing CCNA labs. Got a whole bunch of different options, all the way from free up to a few $100s. We can kind of break down which one might be the best fit for you to do that. Yeah, besides that, make sure you smash the like button, subscribe to the channel, all that other good stuff. I appreciate it. All right, talk to you later.